Hello guys. Today I wanted to pop on and just talk about some of the things that God has been teaching me lately. So let's get into it. So first off, I just wanted to mention that don't mind my hair. It's a little bit crazy today. I tried to do like one of those overnight hair curling things, and yeah, it just didn't turn out as the way that I wanted it to, but that's okay. But so I'll be honest, I have been kind of in a spiritual slump, I would say, the last few weeks, and this happens to me every so often. I don't really understand why it happens, but it's really hard to, when I feel like that, it's really hard to pray. It's really hard to read my Bible and grow and feel hopeful in life. It's kind of like you get into this mood where you feel like nothing is going to change, and not that I'm happy, I guess, with my life and the things that are happening and all that kind of thing. But so it's not like it's like I'm depressed or something like that. It's just more so that for some reason, it's just like my motivation is gone. So, so when that happens, I think God realizes that, well, he knows everything. When we experience this, God is even more grateful and proud of us, I guess you could say, for the little steps that we take. If we do decide to pray, or this morning I prayed a rosary, and it was really difficult for me to even try to motivate myself to do that. Once I was praying, it was hard to concentrate. So and we know that the saints struggled with that as well. But basically, just the littlest thing, God will use that and will make it into something great for us. So I know that this season isn't going to last forever, but for some reason it's not only my spiritual life that I've been unmotivated. It's also like as far as like health-wise, physically, like working out, all that kind of thing. I just have not felt motivated for some reason. And I don't know why, but I think it's okay. We should find the balance between not babying ourselves too much. You want to still do the things that you have to do, but then don't push yourself. I think for a while, like the last couple months, my husband and I have been doing a lot as far as like house projects go, and I've been really, really busy. And now come October, this is the month where it's like you start to kind of feel a shift and a change in the season. Things start slowing down a little bit. So I've been trying to lean into that and not feel too guilty, that I'm not doing as much as what I was doing maybe a month or so before. So that's something that God has been teaching me, is to just be gentle with myself, but to not be lazy, because it's easy to just be like, I'm not going to pray. I don't feel like praying. I'm just not going to. And I've definitely done that enough. So I feel like you do have to push yourself in gentle ways. Another thing that he has been teaching me is that, so if you don't know my story, that I had lost my baby back in May, I since then have really wanted to be pregnant again. And I think anytime we really want something, that can kind of take over and it becomes an idol for ourselves. So I know when I before I was married, before I was in a relationship, I definitely idolized that. And it got to the point where I just felt like, if I don't have this thing in my life, like I'm not going to be happy. My life isn't going to be fulfilled. And I could feel those feelings creeping up again, thinking about being pregnant and being a mom. And, and obviously that's something that I want and something I desire, but it shouldn't get so far to the point that if I don't have it, it makes me feel like lesser than somebody who does have it. Or, just realizing that like God has a plan and a purpose for each of us. So that's something that I've been really trying to pay attention to and not get too caught up thinking about like when is going to happen. And each month that goes by, it's kind of like more and more stress, and that's not what I wanted at all. So I try to it's just hard because when you want something, it's hard not to tell yourself, no, like, don't want that, you know. It's hard to like force your feelings. Obviously you can't do that, but more so, I've just been really leaning into realizing that God's timing is the best timing. And I know that all this stuff happened. There's little dust particles I can see. But all this stuff happened for a reason. And I just need to be patient and knowing that He knows the best for me. So yeah, that's something that got brought up in my inner healing class that I take this past week, and they prayed through it with me to figure out, you know, where that might have been coming from, or my feeling of like, if I don't have the thing that I'm wanting now, I have this temptation to feel like it's never going to happen. So we prayed through that, and I definitely feel a lot healthier about it. Like, I feel like I've been able to just relax a little bit, which is great. Yeah, so that's also something that I have been learning and just growing within myself. And that kind of ties into God teaching me like how I see Him. So a lot of times we see God as how we see our parents. You know, if you had a difficult relationship with your dad, maybe you have a hard time having a good relationship with God because you think of God as the way that you thought of your dad. Or if you're Catholic, same goes for Mother Mary. Like, if you had a hard time with your relationship with your mom, maybe the relationship that you have with Mary is also difficult, or it's hard to see them in a way that is calming and that somebody that you can trust. So that's kind of how it was for me. Like, my dad is a really great guy. I had really great parents, but in his own woundedness, he had a hard time with like being emotionally open and vulnerable, like a lot of men, a lot of guys have a hard time with that. And basically, I think that I started to see God as somebody who, you know, maybe wasn't able to connect with me in the way that I thought, or maybe I thought like God doesn't understand, God doesn't know. You know, I thought of Him as just different than what He was. So something that I've been learning is just how I see God and how I, you know, see myself as a child, as His child. And that's been something that has been very eye-opening to me, and very healing to realize that, you know, I'm definitely getting better with my like relearning that relationship, instead of thinking like, you know, you think of God as maybe somebody who depends on your situation, but maybe you see Him as like a strict God who never, you know, you have to follow all these rules and you know, not in a loving way to protect us, but more so like because I said so kind of a God. And that can be really wounding and hurtful to our hearts. And we see Him as somebody that we have to make sure we follow all the steps and do all the things. And that causes some stress in our hearts and some uneasiness of trying to perform. So yeah, so that's just been something I've been learning, is that fixing that thought process and just being, again, gentler with myself, seeing God as all-loving God, not being too hard on myself. Of course, He, you know, whenever we sin, it does deeply, deeply hurt Him. And we should be aware of that. We shouldn't think of God as somebody who just like winks at evil. I heard that one time, that we sometimes as humans have a tendency to think of God as like the grandpa that just winks at your, you know, things that you do wrong. And that's definitely not how it is. Even the littlest sin that we commit offends God fully, because He is all good and anything outside of good is evil. So, but yeah, so basically just that we need to be gentle with ourselves again, but also just leaning into what he might be teaching us in this season. So that's kind of the point of this video, I guess, is just to kind of lean into where you're at and what he wants you to know in this season. Another thing I've been learning is that there is a lot of power in the words that we use, whether it be words to talk to other people around us, or self-talk, the things that we think about ourselves or the things that we say to ourselves. There's a lot of power in that, and we need to be very gentle again and careful. I definitely agree with freedom of speech, and I don't think we should be censored. Like, sometimes that's a whole nother thing. We should be using our words wisely, and that goes for our close relationships. Specifically for me, I guess I've learned this because, talking with my husband and having a relationship with him, realizing how words can affect him negatively. If I'm mean, or if I say something without thinking or whatever, that can really negatively affect him. And the same goes for him to me. I know whenever I was growing up, I had a tendency to be kind of lippy, you would say, or maybe to talk back, kind of like typical middle school age. And I just thought, like, this is not a big deal because I know that my mom loved, like, it was mainly with my mom, we'd bicker here and there. Not too bad, but just once in a while, where I felt like I could say things and, she's not going to leave. She's my mom. She loves me. So because of that, it's like almost like a prideful thing. Like, well, I can say whatever I want because this person has to love me. But the reality is that's not true really for anybody, but especially not in a future relationship or in a marriage, or friendships. People have free will, and depending on, if you treat them bad enough, they do have the rights to walk away from you. And that's something that I really learned, is that I need to be gentle with the people around me. And not that my husband and I still joke around with each other, and, you can have fun and stuff like that, but it's just being aware of when you're going too far, as far as joking or something, or sarcasm. And then the other side of that is also how we talk to ourselves. So we maybe are thinking that in order to stay humble, we need to always put ourselves down and, decrease ourselves because we don't want to come off as a prideful, arrogant person. So maybe that means you don't compliment yourself, or you don't think highly of yourself because you're afraid of looking a certain way. But Father Mike, and I'm sure other people have laid out this definition of humility as humility is not thinking less of yourself, but it's thinking of yourself less. So we don't want to put ourselves down or have negative self-talk, because that's really not helpful for ourselves or for people around us. But instead we want to, stop thinking so hard about it and just be confident in who God made you to be and do his work. And overall, we should be proud of our accomplishments and not feel like we need to downplay them, because everything comes from God. Everything comes from the Holy Spirit. Those gifts that he gives to us, and we should be proud of those things. So yeah, that's something that I've learned too, is to not really be too hard on myself when it comes to lessening my things that I do good at or that kind of thing. Okay, and then the last thing is learning to romanticize your life. So what I mean by that is whatever season you're in, maybe you're in middle school, and this was me. So maybe you're in middle school and you feel like you want more friends, or you want more of a social life kind of a thing, or you're just ready to get out of middle school, you're ready to get into high school. Instead of looking to the future, just be grateful where you're at. Be grateful, if your parents are young and together and you have your family at home. Be grateful for those years because they go fast. Or maybe if, you do have the friends that you're wanting, or the friend group that you have, just being appreciative of those friends and the freedom that you guys have. And kind of the same goes for high school. There's a lot of new responsibilities that come in high school. As you get older, the schoolwork maybe gets harder. But maybe you have the freedom now to drive and to be independent more so than you used to be. So being grateful for that. And once again, if you're lucky enough to have your parents around, just to be so grateful for the time that you have, because as you keep getting older, your parents keep getting older. And if you have siblings, same thing. So just being, appreciative and soaking in the time that you guys have together under one roof, because like I said, that time goes so fast, and eventually you'll just be out on your own and not knowing what happened. Or if you're in college, also just soaking that time up and hanging out with your friends. And it's just, the point is, kind of where I am at in my life now. I'm married. We have a house. I have a little garden that I love with vegetables, and I have some flowers, and there's things that I'm working towards in the future. Of course, like I mentioned, I want kids and babies, but just being appreciative and just like romanticizing where I'm at right now in this current season, because I know that I'm living in answered prayers, and that's huge. And we're always living in answered prayers, hopefully. Hopefully you're always praying for something and you can look back and be like, oh yeah, like at one point in my life I didn't have this and now I do. And thanking God for that. So yeah, so where I'm at right now, I could feel discouraged because this is the month that I was supposed to have my baby. And there's times where that can be a hard feeling, to know that. But just knowing that I have so much to be grateful for. I am lucky enough to still have my parents, and they're not too old. We can still do stuff. They're not old at all. They're 50, 51. So yeah. And then I have my younger brothers that we get to all hang out together and still, do things. And we all live in the area for the most part, within my 4 brothers live at home, and then one of my other brothers lives within a couple hours of us. So not too crazy. Like we can all still hang out together, and we're a very close-knit family. So, and then my husband's family is all close, and we have tons of friends that I so desperately wanted back, 10 years ago, and now I'm living in that answered prayer. And yeah, there's just so much that you can always be grateful for, and that's what God is reminding me, is to, instead of looking so much into the future all the time, to just be in the present and be thankful for where I'm at, because someday I'll look back at this time and I'm sure that I will wish that I had certain parts of that back. So yeah. Okay, this video is getting kind of long, but I just wanted to mention those things. And hopefully you can take something away from this. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in future videos. Bye.